Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Content Mix. I'm Carlota Pico, your host for today's show, and I'm excited to introduce Adam Spawton-Rice and Anne-Sophie Delafosse, who work at one of the hottest apps at the moment. Yes, I am talking about Deliveroo. As we all know, Deliveroo has been one of the most demanded services during the health pandemic, and Adam and Anne-Sophie have been directly involved in making sure that the content that we receive as users is 1, relevant, 2, culturally sensitive, and 3, accurate at all times. But please let me give the mic over to Adam and Anne-Sophie for a proper introduction. Anne-Sophie, could you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are today, and also what makes Deliveroo so special for you?
Hi, thank you for having us today. My name is Anne-Sophie, and I'm the localization manager at Deliveroo. My background is in languages. I love languages and love how languages and culture are mixed together. So my background was before in different language service providers, where I've learned loads of things about apps and websites and how to localize for different markets. And I've joined Deliveroo now about almost 2 years ago as their first in-house localization specialist, starting the department, building some processes with them. And what I enjoy the most at Deliveroo is quite a few things to pick. Obviously, working with amazing people like Adam, and also being in a startup that constantly evolves and that is constantly challenging how we eat, how we order food. There's a challenge every day, and that's what I love. Mm-hmm. What about you, Adam?
What do I love? I guess it is super exciting. I've worked in startups and scale-ups before, and I'd say Deliveroo definitely has it's a scale-up which has retained a lot of the excitement and energy of a startup. We've kind of moved past some of the classic startup pitfalls. I think it's kind of entering its kind of 30s now, and obviously it's not 30 years old, but starting to read your bank statement sort of level of kind of maturity.
Excellent. Adam, could you tell me a little bit about yourself as well and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having us, obviously, as well. And I'm Adam Spawton-Rice. I am the Global Content Marketing Manager for Deliveroo's B2B restaurant marketing. So in short, that's myself, and obviously Anne-Sophie is a really integral part of that, and a team of people who are constantly trying to improve on the kind of digital offering for our restaurants. And that's bringing new restaurants as well as retaining the ones we've got. So that's across website, CRM, social, and also some physical collateral as well. I guess my background, I've been, like I said, in startups and scale-ups, but also in-house agency. I've worked across pretty much every B2C vertical that I can think of. And I guess for me, this is a relatively new venture in terms of global. I've worked on international brands before, and B2B as my sole purpose, or B2B to C, as we call it, is relatively new as well. I've been here since November.
Okay, but you've definitely been around the block in terms of content management and content marketing.
In those things, yes.
Okay, Anne-Sophie, my next question is for you. Moving into COVID-19, the dreaded word, we all hate it. We all hate COVID-19 and the effects that it's had on our lives as human beings and on companies worldwide. But I do want to focus on a quote that Walt Disney said. The CEO of Walt Disney said this: "The heart and soul of a company is creativity and innovation." So, Anne-Sophie, in light of the global pandemic, in what ways has Deliveroo been creative or innovative this year?
That's a very good question. So, I guess we can go into two directions. So, the first one would be how Deliveroo has changed their product. So back in January, we had a roadmap for 2020 with specific products that we wanted to launch. And when COVID hit, we had to change it all. So we had to be super flexible about it and be quick. So for example, we we fast track our menu manager tool that enables restaurants to change their menu in a matter of minutes. And more recently, when markets reopen, we launched table service that allows customers to go and have a dining experience contact-free, so in the restaurant using the Deliveroo app. So that really shows that Deliveroo embrace change and think fast to make sure we can support our partners during the COVID time. And then I guess more internally on the way we work, I mean, it was a big shift to move from office work to a remote settings in lockdown. And we've made really the most use of Google Hangouts, Google Jamboards. I mean, we're able to do workshops and work very much collaboratively still, even if we're in different part of the world. So, I mean, that's one of Deliveroo's core value is we embrace change. And I think the last couple of months, we really represented that value.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm actually one of Deliveroo's users, so I do have to give a shout out to your entire team, but especially to the bikers and especially as well to the restaurants, because without those two components, I would have not been fed throughout the entire pandemic. And I'm so happy that I was able to rely on your app to make sure that I received my lunch and dinner on time every day. So thank you. Adam, do you have anything else to add to Anne-Sophie's response?
Yeah, so first to come back to your point about riders and restaurants, it's been a really, really hard time all over the world for restaurants. So I think, as Anne-Sophie mentioned, it's like the key to all of that has been kind of rolling with the punches and working really, really collaboratively. And I think Deliveroo, in terms of innovation, everyone's quite data literate. So what's been really impressive for me as someone quite new at Deliveroo is, you know, this list alert, but it's like the number of teams who work together to respond to some of the challenges that restaurants face, from kind of everything from negotiating your rent to the basics of how you then reopen as a restaurant. Some of that is more kind of comms based, but the scale of the response and the speed of the response has been based on the data and insights teams, commercial teams, marketing teams on consumer and restaurant side, and then people like Anne-Sophie and I reacting to genuine problems with really well thought out solutions about, you know, if I'm a restaurant, how exactly do I approach reopening? How exactly do I talk to customers about our response to COVID-19? I think that's really interesting. That's where the B2B to C comes in.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic has just affected us all on so many different levels. It's affected companies and in terms of the livelihood of that company and of those restaurants and their entire staff force. So many sensitive subjects, and everybody is panicking for a different reason. So to be able to talk to all those different audiences in a very empathetic and sensitive way, and also to like understand them and to put yourself in their shoes, is quite a challenge when it comes to content marketing, because it requires a lot of out of the box thinking.
And the nuance of that, obviously, and Sophie and I work hand in hand, but the real kind of the output of my work through Anne-Sophie and her team of localization experts is a message which actually is the right message in the right location.
Yeah. Marketing is all about timing, getting the message to the right person at the right time. Yeah. Because if you wait 5 more minutes or 1 more day, that might not be the right message anymore. And therefore you have to tweak it. Okay, Adam, my next question is for you. How has the role of marketing changed since the start of the global pandemic? And also, please keep in mind social movements like, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement, apart from COVID-19. It's been quite a year, right? COVID coaster 2020.
Yeah, 2020 has been a year. So I think a lot's changed in the world, marketing aside. So from the logistics of trying to work from home for lots of us, to even bigger, actually probably more important shifts in expectations of customers, of big business and of marketing, about how you present yourself, your views, and how you present your customers back to themselves. So like diversifying the stock photography you use, I think is a really simple way to actually do that. And doing that in market as well, kind of respecting who you're talking to by showing them themselves. It's kind of an easy-ish sales tactic to pull out. I think there are lots of things that I want to see as forever changes. So the Progress Pride flag, which Deliveroo now uses during Pride Month on your little delivery tracker, So the Progress Pride flag is the addition of a black and brown and trans kind of colours into the flag. And it's a really simple way, I think, businesses can show genuine support for the LGBTQ community. Yeah, and I guess Deliveroo is in the business of people. So it's a three-sided network where you have, on one side, you have the consumer, on another, you have the restaurant, and another, you have the riders. So each of those different kind of pieces of the puzzle, Anne-Sophie works across all of them. I just work in the restaurants bit. It is about, I mean, personally, when I write copy, I try and make sure it is kind of as human as possible. And there are also translation implications for how you simplify language too. But I think, marketing is all about reaching the right person. And whether you're doing B2B or B2C, it's talking to that person in a way which makes them feel comfortable rather than uncomfortable. Like, we've all been served ads or social media ads that are actually a bit creepy, or like, you're not the right audience for that. So I think having that approach in organic as well, so you're always talking to someone on their level, in the right language, in the right tone.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Okay, you did touch upon the magic word, localization. Anne-Sophie, what is localization?
Oh, where to start? Where to start with localization, right? So if I go with like the dictionary definition, right, of what localization means is to make your product, to make your content local for a particular market. So I think sometimes people don't necessarily understand what localization means and only think of localization and translation being the same thing, but it is actually different. So if you think of localization, it has different steps. The first step would be the language. You need to first speak the language of your users, but that doesn't mean just speaking English. Like, let's say, if you take that example, you'll have to speak differently to people in the US, from the UK to South Africa to Australia. So, and that's where your localization comes in, because you'll have to tweak that language specific to a market. But if we go back to localization and marketing and how we work with Adam is also finding, like, we have our tone or our voice as a brand. We have the Deliveroo brand voice, and then you have to find the right tone of what Deliveroo is for each market. So our tone for Spain, for example, might be slightly different than what it is for the UK. And we've seen that, I mean, during COVID, right, when we had some things that we couldn't really say in the same way in the UK than in Italy, or things like this. So that is, to a very basic, that's what localization is you have to find your voice, to be able to speak to your users, to appeal to them in their language and in what they want to hear, what will resonate with them. So that's the very basis. Then don't get me started on images, colors, and all of this.
Well, I mean, that's going to be my next question, because we have to
Brilliant.
What role do colors, images, symbols play in this entire localization thing?
Well, I'll take the example that Adam used earlier, right, about finding the right images and making sure that the people see themselves in those images. And we actually have, I think it's a taco, if I'm not mistaken, on our main homepage, and that resonates really well in the UK. But when we put that in France, the French market was like, no, that's not going to go, because it was not appealing. It's not an appealing type of food for them, not the taco, but just the photo. And another example of that, which I loved, and that was from yesterday actually, with the Italian market, where on a header of an email we had a pizza, but very much US style pizza, and they were like, no, we can't use that pizza in Italy.
Or like deep dish.
Exactly. So that's a no-go. So that's why you see that images are super important, because it's like the language. You need to find what resonates with your users. Images tell a story, and they can tell a different story in different markets. Mm-hmm. So you need to make sure it's accurate. There's another thing that people tend to forget is, and I'll take the icon, for example, that we have at the moment. Great that we have it. I mean, super happy that we have the new flag, but we can't use it in some markets, and those little icons that you go and see in the app, they're very easily missed. And if you miss them for certain markets, that's a no-go. So you have to be very careful. So icons, images, colors can mean different things in different languages. I mean, red in the Chinese market is different from what it means in the US, for example. So that's what also is a big part of localization, and that's what we're here to help teams to be aware of those little differences.
That actually reminds me of a campaign that I read yesterday. It was published on LinkedIn, and it was a campaign done by Balenciaga, which is a fashion brand, and they were targeting the Chinese audience, but they were completely out of touch with the audience, and their consumers in China actually thought it was a fake campaign. They thought that it was an imposter, Balenciaga, posting that type of imagery on the social channels, because it was from like, I don't know how many seasons ago, and that campaign is like so 1980s, which I mean is a fair enough response. But I do think that it ties in nicely with your localization comment and how important it is to really localize your campaigns according to local market trends and your local audience.
Yeah, and it's a way, I think localization is a way to build the trust that you have with your different audience.
Yeah.
Like, this is the first medium, this is what they'll read, this is what they'll see in all languages.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Anne-Sophie, this actually leads me into my next question. Should website navigation also be localized?
That's a very good question, and a tricky one as well, because if we talk about the flow of a website or of an app, if you have to create a different flow for each market, it could become a big project, right? You'd have a lot of engineers, a lot of designers. So I don't know if, well, I don't know, because it depends on your product and on your audiences and how different they are, and if you actually need to have a different navigation or not. I've seen some companies compromising a little bit with having only a part of their website being slightly different. So, for example, when you click the checkout button of an e-commerce website, you might be taken through a different checkout order depending on where you live in and from that culture and things like this.
What about character counts? I'm sure character count must play a huge role in terms of getting all of the information that Adam is talking about onto one app but localized for different markets.
Yes, I mean that's like the red words when you hear character restrictions, and you have to localize into Dutch, for example, which tends to be about 40% longer. And when people tell me, oh, you only have 16 characters, we actually have that. It's a little bit of it's not an issue because we overcome it, but if you open the app, you have little grids with grocery, Chinese food, things like this, and it's actually a character limit of 16 characters. And when you already have a word that is 16 characters in English, having it in a different language is going to be challenging. So what we tend to do in that case is ask the designers or the engineers, what is it that you want to say? Not the actual translation, but what is your message? And we'll find sometimes completely different way of saying it that fits that character limit. So it's little tricks like this. But yeah.
It kind of makes me have that like nervous laugh of like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
That must be quite a challenge. Anne-Sophie, how many markets does Deliveroo work in right now?
We're in 12 markets. Okay. So I'll go like around the globe. So it's UK, Ireland, Netherlands, Belgium, France, Spain, Italy, UAE, Kuwait, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia. Did I miss any, Adam?
No, I think
we're good.
I might be offended if we've missed one and not realised, but I think that's everyone. And that obviously that splits as well from a localization point of view. So there are actually more. So we have Belgian French, Belgian Dutch, Hong Kong English, Hong Kong Chinese.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Okay, this actually does lead me to my next question, which is for Adam. When it comes to content, HubSpot's CEO said the following, start quote, "What separates good content from great content is a willingness to take risks and to push the envelope." So Adam, taking it to a content marketing level, what separates good content marketing from great content marketing?
So I think this is a really easy one from a user perspective. I think, is it useful or is it interesting? And I think if not, you've wasted your time. So content marketing for me is like my background. It's SEO, social and PR. So it's trying to hit all those KPIs, all of the KPIs for all of those kind of disciplines with content marketing. So is it useful or interesting is how you create the content that sells you to your audience, wins you links from an SEO point of view. and also gets your content shared. So if it's useful, I will share it with someone else, whether through dark social or through kind of LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook even. And I think whether it's useful or interesting, it determines how much traction you tend to get in with coverage for PR as well as SEO. And the kind of so what of good content. So a content marketing manager should have so what in the back of their head at all times. I think taking a risk is usually worth it. So even something as simple as adding humor to your copy or uncommon design, if you give a shit or you know your shit, it usually shows. And I think that's kind of the key to kind of good content marketing.
Okay. There are a lot of distribution channels. There are a lot of ways to communicate with your different audiences worldwide. So how do you prioritize content? Because there's not enough time in the day to do everything, right?
Yeah, and I think between the two of us, there are like a million different work streams, and there's the always on work stream for CRM comms that I feed into. This is a pretty constant stream of work, which I feed into it, but I also feed into Anne-Sophie's workflow because whatever we're doing needs to then go to all the different markets as well. So I'm continually working with my developer/designer Ben on improving the website. So we're planned all the way up to next year for what we want to achieve. But I guess prioritization is all about where are the biggest gaps and where are the biggest opportunities. So I use a framework called EVA. So educate, validate, adopt. So it's tell them what it is. First of all, why should you buy this product? Why should you join Deliveroo as a restaurant? Tell them why it's good, and if you can do that with numbers, like hard data is a really persuasive tool, especially if you're marketing to businesses. Testimonials, always good. I think testimonials often underappreciated as a sales tool because it's social proof that the product you're selling works. But also, I think the amount of effort that is required to get to a good case study is often also not understood. Once you've brought them in, they've been sold to and they've agreed, it's kind of the adoption bit, which is a unique bit for me at least. Having worked for kind of web-based brands before, adoption when you've got a new product is something I've never had to really muscle in on. So it's once you've signed up for Deliveroo, it's add your menu in this way, and you can start taking orders and you can start making money. Add more photos to your menu for if you're talking to restaurants to achieve more orders. And as I'm sure Anne-Sophie will tell you, there's the ever-present risk, which kind of deprioritizes everything. Of stop what you're doing and do this, which is what makes delivery so exciting. And I think it's kind of one of those moments where you get 2 months into a project and then catch your breath, and you're like, okay, cool, we've created table service.
Okay, Adam, I do want to zoom into part of your response. You mentioned that you already have your 12-month strategy planned out for the next year. So congratulations on that. I mean, quite an accomplishment, especially because you've only been 10 months at Deliveroo. Could you talk to me about the major lessons that you've learned so far?
Yeah, I guess so Deliveroo Deliveroo time is almost like dog years. There's a lot going on, so there's a lot to absorb and learn, and it's been really exciting. I think the pace of Deliveroo is something that is genuinely what makes it an exciting place to work, but also an exciting kind of prospect for restaurants and consumers and riders too. And I guess across all of that three-sided network, but my learnings are specific to restaurants. I think working with Anne-Sophie and kind of stealing some of her insights as I build content. I think it's really interesting that even within the UK, there are kind of sub-communities that may be better served with another language apart from English. So my approach has been to kind of really pare back language. So restaurant-facing comms and content I use when I write stuff, the Fleisch-Kincaid readability test. So it basically reduces the reading level of English, which in theory better serves English as a second language audience. And I guess the spin-off question about the kind of plans going forward. So the 12-month plan is just for the website at the moment. So everything else kind of follows on from that. But it's really about developing a proposition for restaurants in a way which is really cohesive and also I guess I'll keep the really sexy stuff under my hat, but a lot of it is really unsexy stuff about building foundational. Like, to me, what is really, really important from a website is that you have the basics right before you try and do anything else with it. So I'm building this foundation so I can create bigger and better activations, and all the time having SEO in mind. So what can we do to better reach our audience without having to pay to reach them? I think it's really interesting as well on the kind of all the different market-specific differences. So like Anne-Sophie has mentioned to me before about Netherlands, and I think there is a, correct me if I'm wrong, was it a large Thai community?
Yes, there's different communities. Like in the UK, we have Chinese speaking, for example. Netherlands is Thai. I think it's in France as well, where it's a big Arabic community. So we see like different patches, and one that I remember is because we've actually added a language on the rider side. Is we have a lot of riders in the UK and in Ireland who are Brazilian Portuguese.
That's really interesting because I've seen that tab and I've always wondered why it's there. Now I know.
Now you know.
You learn something new every day.
I do.
Okay, going back to Anne-Sophie, you were responsible for developing Deliveroo's entire localization strategy and then ultimately to launching that localization strategy as well. What did this process look like? So from managing content remotely to working across roles to working across departments, could you talk to me more about the challenges and also the lessons that you learned throughout that entire process?
Yeah, sure. So when I started at Deliveroo, so we had already entered quite a few markets. So some parts of the localization was done, and it was mainly driven by engineers and content designers or designers at the time. So it was kind of like put in like different places in the business. So for one of the first thing I did was to actually centralize it all to ensure that we were consistent as well in the language that we use. So that centralization took a little bit of time because obviously we're a big business with loads of different teams. And as Adam was saying, like I work across consumer, rider and restaurant. So it's quite a lot of teams to talk to and kind of change their behavior as well to ensure that they go through our localization processes. And then one of the second big step I've done was to hire the right people for the different type of content. So we work mainly with freelancers. So we have freelance, I call them language specialists because they're more than translators. And we have some that are specialized into UI. So they will go in actually everything you see on the app. They will take care of that because it's slightly different. And then we'll have people who are specialized in marketing. So when we did the restaurant website, for example, with Adam, we had a marketing specialist in French, for example, helping us, supporting us through that. And the way we work then with Adam was that he would talk to me through, and please correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm not remembering everything correctly, but we would sit together. He would brief me on what he was trying to achieve and what was the constant strategy of that, the restructure of the website. Either I would pass this on to the linguist, or they would actually come in and we would do a brief together, so we would know exactly what we're trying to achieve. So kind of like to mirror that into their language, with also the local markets to advise on if we should, maybe prioritize this type of copy here and there. So that's kind of like how we work.
What about content-wise, Anne-Sophie and Adam? Because I think you both can probably speak to this question. Do you have any tips, advice, or insights for marketers who are struggling to create engaging and valuable content? Anne-Sophie, it'd be awesome if you could zoom into how you create engaging and valuable content for different markets. And Adam, it'd be great if you could talk about how you do it, period.
Do you want to go first?
Well, I would say that we used your work as reference. So, and I went to a conference recently and I really liked it. And I think I'm going to steal their workflow. Is what they do for the app is, instead of actually writing the English, they say what the CTA is aimed for. So, and then so the linguist actually it's almost they do a copywriting job within their language based on what the call to action is supposed to be. So I want to kind of test that. I haven't started yet, but I think at some point I want to test that. But the way we would do it with our linguists, because I don't do it myself, all of it is on them and their creativity really, and the local marketing teams. But we'll feed from what Adam is building and is writing, and change it slightly to fit that market. But yeah, the genius come from the creative, and that's Adam, that's not me.
Okay, Adam, so how do you do it? Tell us your special recipe.
Well, I guess from a localization point of view, so the process that Anne-Sophie talked about before, so create the kind of raw materials and bring it to Anne-Sophie and her team of specialists, and then it tends to come back to me, then take back to the in-market teams to like QC that. And I think that's a really important process, and one which isn't always respected, which I think Anne-Sophie has a really hard job trying to get people to do things the right way rather than the fast way sometimes. But I really respect her strength in making sure that people stick to it. I guess in terms of my general advice to marketers, so the challenge for me to do work that I'm proud of, I think, has always been securing budget to do bigger, better things. I think it's often, especially an agency where you're basically already being paid a retainer fee sometimes and then asking for more money. And in startups, rather than scale-ups, there is often not much money at all. So I think it's a question of risk versus risk versus reward, and kind of spend is part of that. I think you can do a lot with free research, which has its limits, obviously. So in the UK, there's something called Freedom of Information Act, which you can kind of request public bodies give you information. I worked for a car brand a few years ago where we asked for kind of traffic accident data, which was in terms of volume when you're selling content in, the volume of data, the number of respondents is really important to actually get coverage from that. Good copy, good stock photography. I think free stock is great, but I really believe you should pay a photographer for their work. And I think when you're using free stock everywhere, it does become quite apparent. I think if in doubt, the angle of the content itself, so list alert here, I think there's a few themes that I would always kind of use as a crux for then any client I've worked on, you can always angle it towards one of these. So food, sex, death, money, or furry animals. So one of those things has just made both of you smile. I think I've worked for a luxury retirement company and a private jet company and a company that makes TVs, and you can always angle some of it to that. I think it's not just always about the product itself, it's about how people use that product. And also my tip is sign up for an email newsletter called Exploding Topics, which is just, I use it to kind of feed my thinking sometimes. So it's kind of, it will give you brand new trending terms through organic search and products as well. So
I wanted to jump on one thing that Adam just said about having photographers and actually paying people for their professional skills. And I think in localization, and I think also in content, when you know a language, or when you speak or write a language, people will assume you can write it in a marketing way. So often people will go and say, oh, just ask someone that speaks the language, and that copy might not work, might not resonate, because you actually need someone who understands as well your audience and understand the psyche behind it and the words and how important certain words and some certain structure will play in someone's mind. So I think it's also very important that you get the right people and not rely on someone's bilingual knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I think we have a copy team that I also lean on. I am not a copywriter. As a content marketer, you kind of have to be like a spork or a Swiss Army knife and have a few different areas of experience. But if we're doing something which is restaurant facing and is printed, therefore is permanent and is out there, I always need to rely on that copy team to actually give it a kind of a brand scan, and also, someone else reviewing your work is always a positive thing, even if you don't like the feedback.
Yeah, definitely. 4 eyes are always better than 2, right? And spinning off of what you said, Anne-Sophie, I like calling them cultural consultants.
Yes, that's a good one. That's a very good one.
Okay, we are coming towards the end of the interview. We actually only have 2 more minutes. So to wrap this interview up, I'd like to ask you about practical examples. Adam, could you start off with a campaign or a project that you've led that you're particularly proud of, its purpose, and what made it stand out throughout your career?
Other than Deliveroo, I think probably the marketing work that I've done in agency I'm quite proud of. So some really ambitious concept which I co-created with a friend for a private jet company about taste science and how champagne tastes in the air. And it was relatively cheap to create in the end because I didn't want to spend too much money. But it was the first time I saw my work translated into multiple languages, which was really exciting for me. And that was like cinemagraphs and a really kind of, I mean, wanky is probably not the right word, but like a silly kind of concept. And I guess other than that, a cross-channel influencer campaign from ages ago I worked on with Eurostar. And it was like a photo essay from London and Paris, and we swapped people over. It was lovely. It was beautiful.
I remember that. I saw that. Oh, that was you. Amazing. I didn't know.
Okay, beautiful. Well, on that note, we're going to end today's interview. Anne-Sophie and Adam, thank you so much for joining us on the Content Mix. It was a pleasure to meet you both. I've learned so much about Deliveroo, which was an app that I already loved, but now I love even more. So thank you. And I hope to have you back on the show one day in the near future and talk more about Deliveroo, content marketing, and localization.
Thank you for having us.
It was our pleasure. And to everybody listening in today, thank you for joining us on the Content Mix. For more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out the Content Mix. We'll be releasing interviews just like this one every week, so keep on tuning in. Thanks again. Have a fabulous day and see you next time. Bye.